the sort of practical things in life remind me of my parents. Like, I feel like they gave me a lot of good tools. They stayed married, so staying married is something that I value and have done. Not living beyond your means and those kind of things. So I feel like I'm like my parents, and I'm not like my parents in that I've taken risks that they would have never taken. When I feel that a knot in the pit of my stomach, I don't turn away from it. I lean into it. I think I'm more of a risk taker than my parents were, and I probably am because they gave me a foundation in which I could be a risk taker.
Oh boy. Good one. Okay. What's the word in English? That we really flourish? No, in the things that are beautiful. Not just objects, but people, moments, experiences that are beautiful. They taught me that. And what do I have of myself they did not have? I would say spirituality.
My dad was an incredible bon vivant. He had great joie de vivre. And he was kind of an experimenter. He didn't stick in any one career through his whole life. He had an artistic sensibility, a great photographer. And my mother was just like oozing creativity. She just couldn't help herself. She was beautiful, she was refined, she was funny. So I hope I got some of that stuff. But I think there's a part of me that's very different. Number one, it's as a mother. I feel like, the way we grew up as boomers was, I feel like my family, we kind of grew up as weeds. We got a lot offered to us, but that personal touch, that real like, hey, what are you saying? And what's really going on in that little head of yours? Not too much of that, and I feel like it's something that I try to double up on with my own daughter. And I guess the other thing is like a huge exploratory component, which is a big part of my life. Just digging deeper, climbing higher, and searching longer and wider.
Well, I grew up with my dad, and so occasionally I find myself eating and thinking that I'm my dad because of the position that I'm holding my knife and fork, and I just feel this connection with him, this almost symbiotic relationship. I'm a little different than my dad because my dad grew up in a time where he could not be aggressive. Black men could not speak up. So everything rolled off his back. I wish that was the case with me. Everything doesn't, I'm pretty good at it, but not like my dad. In fact, I think I only heard him curse once. Only if I'm getting mad, like one time. But it was a different time, Today, the other thing I learned from my dad is helping others. My father would give you the shirt off his back if it would help you more than him, And that's one thing I've kind of consumed into my own life as far as like being of service to my community.
Though I was not particularly close to my father in many ways, I know that he said this more than once, "You're a great broad, Kathy," and he was very proud of how I lived my life. He was a salesman. I think I've got that from him. Practicality about money and saving, and from my mother, I feel that she could have been quite a gal in the artistic world and creative world, but she was a mom and loved her 3 girls, and I think my love of beauty and came from her. So I think I have really the best of both worlds from my parents.
Okay. Well, I tend to remind myself more of my mother, but increasingly of my father. And I think I get a lot of my style and cynicism and wisdom from my father, and I think I get a lot of my pragmatism and drive from my mother.
And part of you, did they not have that's all your own?
the spirituality?
Oh, I would say some of their most pronounced aspects remind me of myself, and that would be my father's humor and my mother's sense of worry. And the rest, I don't think they had the need to explore life.
Well, my dad was a brooder, and he had a hard time ever forgiving people, and he was a slow burner. But my mom was very volatile, but she would snap and it'd be over really quickly. And she was basically a really sunny person, and my father was I would say pretty dark. And I'm split. I mean, I certainly have a darkness that my father had, and that I battle against. And I think that battle's gotten easier in the last few years. And my mom had a real resilience and a kind of love of life and a spirit that my mom's been dead for, I don't know, now I think about 10 years, and my dad's been dead since 98, and we never talk about my father in our family. I mean, almost never. And we talk about my mom all the time because her spirit is so strong and so much with us. I also think that my parents were really focused on their lives and not on their kids' lives. That was just sort of the way they grew up. And I think that I'm a much better parent than I ever thought I would be. I felt my job was to be my kid's advocate, so I take that job pretty seriously.
I think my grandmother was probably my biggest influence. My father was very organized after a fashion and bit of a problem solver. So I think I see more of myself in my father in myself than my mother.
My father was the great adventurer who loves traveling. I mean, unfortunately he's dead now, but he loved traveling, and I definitely have got the travel bug from him. Where I'm different, well, we've all been freelance, that's true too, so we've all been freelance people. But I think where it's different is that I've been a CEO of my businesses, so I've really taken charge in a way that definitely my mother didn't do. She kind of submitted to, she worked when she was younger, but then when she got married, she pretty much was not a housewife. She was never a housewife, but, just more submissive to being the wife of.
First of all, my father died when I was quite young, so, In fact, I remember him being, he was a lawyer and he was very involved in a lot of very pro-social activities, but he was a real dandy as a dresser. And I remember he had a ruby pinky ring, was the one thing, which, this was a long time ago, so men wore ruby pinky rings.
They still do.
And he was very organized. His desk, he'd have all the pencils lined up exactly right. And I used to go and just move one a little bit and completely throw him off balance.
Did you get that from him, though?
I'm not quite that organized. I mean, I think about it. I don't actually necessarily do it all the time. And my mother was very politically active and worked in politics most of her life, but also was very interested in the arts. And I think that's a lot of what I took from her was.
So what is different about you?
I think she was interested in the arts, but I actually kind of made that my life.
That's that moment when you look in the mirror and you see your mother. It's sort of a scary moment that you are, in fact, becoming this older person that you never thought you were going to become. Somehow you were going to avoid that entirely. But at the same time, I think I had a very different relationship with my parents than I do with my children. And I feel gratified that there was a sort of cycle going on in my family where each generation fought with the previous generation. And I'm sort of surprised my kids are 27 and 29, and we have a good relationship, and they confide in me, which I find kind of shocking. I didn't really confide in my parents that much. And that's nice that there's an openness between us. And so I think, there's a British psychiatrist called Dr. Winnicott, and his big thing was that you were the good enough mother. And that's what I aim for, is to be the good enough mother.